Meet Reed Lance Rosenthal, rancher, #1 best-selling award-winning author, and unabashedly, unapologetically on the right side of the outstanding issues of our generation. But don't try to fence him in. Sometimes his positions will surprise you, because Reed is definitely his own man, with his own opinions. You might love him, you might hate him, but you won't be able to stop listening. Step over to the right side with Reed.
Howdy, listeners and podcasters and video viewers. Coast to coast, the Gulf to Canada and around the globe. Reed Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side Radio and the Cowboys Take. So, here's another advantage to not doing AM. I can't update AM once it's posted through the FTP to all the stations, but I can do that with podcast and video. And this is the very first such update. Thank you to all of you, by the way, who have already written me to say they really like the new format and the show yesterday, shorter, 2 shows a week, and we can have quick adjuncts, which this is. I spent last night researching and this morning verifying all sorts of, should we say, more stuff. Disgusting, treasonous actions by the federal government to basically do a political genocide against red states, and at the least to interfere with the election process in the Southeast, Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Florida. What I have to bring you, you may have heard some other places, I'm not sure, all consolidated and very quick. This is only going to be 6 to 10 minutes. And you can listen to yesterday's posting to kind of get the foundation of it. But this is absolutely mind-boggling. Your jaw will hit when you hear about what Americans who run this government and have taken an oath to the Constitution, which is really an oath to their fellow Americans, have done, are not doing, and where they've spent the money, you are not going to be happy. Let me tell you, you are not going to be happy. I am furious. And I'm trying to hold myself back here, but I am pissed off. So here we go. Let's take in context the fact we've sent $8 billion to Ukraine, billions to Israel, over the last year, $3 billion to the Taliban in Afghanistan, because they treated us so well and we got out of there so smoothly, shall we say, and professionally. And billions more to Yemen, countries in Africa, Egypt, Haiti, Guatemala, you name it. On the cast of humanitarian aid and blah, 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 whatever. It's all lies. If the government tells you anything right now, it is untrue, almost without exception. It is really pathetic when you believe Russian news or international news over the news in your own country. And MSM, you are communist collaborators and you are traitors. So let me get started. Keeping in mind all those many, 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 many billions which have gone out the door literally in the last 3 to 6 months to people other than Americans, here's what I'm going to have a little tape for you, okay? I'm going to add a couple of articles under rat-a-tat-tat treason where I've added the articles from yesterday. And there's a tape of Biden, and Harris said about the same thing. If I can dig up that tape in time, I'll do it. I want to get this out right away. Basically, he was asked about the hurricane and what the federal government was doing and how people were doing. And first of all, he said, what storm? The guy didn't even register. Remember, he was on his fat ass sitting on a beach during all this, letting the last of his brain cells, I guess, die. Kamala doesn't even have the excuse of age. And then he goes, oh, yeah, the hurricane. Oh, listen, we have done and we are doing everything we can, and everyone is happy. Literally, you can listen to this guy say this himself. You can listen to Kamala Harris say virtually the same thing in different word salad. And now let me tell you, keep in mind my show of yesterday. So number one, Elon Musk is down there with helicopters dropping off all sorts of communications equipment to remote areas that have been cut off entirely out of his pocket. You might be interested to know that Elon's company was the low bidder to supply all these areas about a year ago with all this equipment. Because of political reasons, the government didn't take the low bid. Besides, it's not their money, right? It's your money and our money. And the money of the people that they're supposed to be helping down there who are dying and starving and not being rescued. They took somebody else's bid who didn't get the job done. Wow. That's kind of like the $6 billion for EV stations, and 2 have been built. Do I need to keep going down the list? Anyway, Elon has been tweeting like crazy on X, right? Formerly Twitter. And he has all sorts of encounters and videos and all sorts of things. And he is being interfered with the same way that private citizens are being interfered with down there by federal officials or state officials who, I guess, don't have their pocket copy of the Constitution, who've been told what to do, and like obedient, I'll be nice, sheep, are doing what they're told by crooked and traitorous feds run by treasonous and treacherous upperlings in the Biden-Harris administration. So there are now instances, and this is going to play in my next show, because this actually is a good thing, and I'll tell you why. You can think about it. There are now instances of FEMA officials, federal officials, trying to shut down helicopter landing sites and takeoff points where they're picking up supplies or picking up Elon's equipment that he's also buzzing around with trying to deliver. And federal officials saying, you can't land here. You can't take off from here. You can't load that. And now there's videos of people stepping out of those helicopters with guns and saying, get out of my way. Think about that. That might play rather large in what's coming at us. That mentality. Yep. And so, anyway, Elon confirms that FEMA has been shutting down roads, trucks, trailers, helicopters, delivery of goods, services, medical, Elon equipment, Skylink equipment to all these poor people that are stranded up there in the mountains. And he was on site in a lot of these occasions himself. He's doing all this for free. And everybody's jumping up and down about the fact that although there's Army bases in the area, when they go up and talk to the Army personnel with, legions of Black Hawk helicopters, et cetera, sitting there on the pads and the runways, absolutely doing nothing, they've been told they don't have any orders. Nobody's given them any orders to go in and help. Okay. FEMA, their excuse is that they're out of money. They're out of money, yes. Now, whose department is this? Oh, that's right, Department of Homeland Security. And who runs that? Mayorkas, one of the first people who should be tried for treason and dealt with after being found guilty. Although there's a list of about 30 there at the top, and then it expands rather dramatically thereafter. And the reason they're out of money, folks, they've admitted, is for humanitarian purposes. They took their $1.4 billion taxpayer-funded American Relief Fund to help Americans in exactly this kind of situation, and they use it for humanitarian purposes, for illegal aliens, which they allowed in the country and then gave cell phones to, and monthly checks to, and lodging to, and medical facilities, and schooling, and do I need to go on? And that's why FEMA doesn't have, they say, enough money to go help their fellow Americans for whom the money was held in trust. This is not just treason. This is genocide, political genocide. When you know somebody's dying and you do nothing to help them, it's the same as killing them. The exact same thing. And it is deliberate. So, despite the press secretary for the White House adding to the choir of lies by Kamala Harris and Biden and the rest of the creeps up there, she said that the president and the vice president have been working around the clock. The administration has been working around the clock, folks, 24/7, to help these people in these five southeastern states. Yeah. If you were working around the clock, I know a little bit about this. If you were working around the clock and you had Black Hawk helicopters and supplies, you had a federal agency interfering with civilian activities that doesn't cost federal government a dime, and you had an agency that was listen to this, taking supplies from civilian suppliers away from them, arresting people, and then putting the supplies in warehouses to be dealt with later, stopping refuse trucks from dumping moldy, dangerous, toxic stuff that they have taken out of these homes and all this stuff in dump sites and ordering them, I am not making this up, to deliver them back and dump them in the people's driveway. It seems to me that if you're working 24/7, you probably have time for 15 minutes of phone calls to your traitorous director at DHS, to the director of FEMA, who's just as bad, to any other agency involved, to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and issue as commander-in-chief or wannabe commander-in-chief, even though Barry Obama is really running the show, and Barry Obama should be making the calls if Biden has forgotten the phone numbers, as is possible, or Kamala Harris is too busy out campaigning. But Barry is too busy campaigning too, you know? Kind of like Benghazi. You remember that election? He was in Las Vegas doing a fundraiser, and they just couldn't get help to those Americans on the roof protecting the embassy. Right. Same deal. You know, a scorpion is always a scorpion, folks. It never changes its colors or its nature. I'll remind you of a little story of that in the coming show later in the week, the late week show. But it seems to me you could make those 15 minutes of calls to 5 or 6 key people, and the commanders who are in the Joint Chiefs of Staff could call their respective field commanders and division commanders and say, you get in touch with whoever's running that airbase, and you tell him there better be helicopters in the air in 3 minutes, or I will court-martial you or demote you or do whatever I have to do. And you better not stop until everybody in those 5 states is taken care of. And you better cooperate with the civilian people, too. And if anybody gets in your way from the federal government, you are to text me, tell me, call me, or whatever, and I'll make sure they're in jail and don't have a job. I think that would take 15 minutes. What do you think? Even as incompetent as the federal government is, the calls would take 15 minutes. The folks in the field, and the commanders particularly, you know, who have been weeded through and, shall we say, combed out of the military where they're good and left where they're woke, even those commanders and their commanders under them, like the commanders of the air bases where U.S. taxpayer-funded military equipment is sitting idle while Americans die miles away, they could probably mobilize in an hour or two. What do you think? How long does it take to load food, get a GPS coordinate, contact the civilians who are trying to do the job, and get the job done? I suggest you write your congressman, you write your senator, you remember this, you make sure you vote, and you make sure you get everybody that you know to vote, and you get everybody that they know, and they know, and they know to vote. And then if we gain control of this insane asylum, we can bring these people to justice because it needs to be done. Keep the wind at your back. Don't let the government get at your back. Read Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side Radio. Other than this, have a great weekend.
Please remember, if you've missed any shows, just click on Show Archive and you'll find all of his shows. We look forward to seeing you here again next week for another episode of Read Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side.